For nuclear supremacy. Here's what he told Reuters in his first comments on the issue since taking office.
It would be wonderful. A dream would be that no country would have nukes. But if countries are going to have nukes, we're going to be at the top of the pack.
All right, Matthew, with a good day to you, what do you make of these comments here? And what to say to those who fear that his approach could set off an arms race?
Well, good afternoon, Alex. Thanks for having me on. These comments got attention, but they're actually pretty consistent with what U.S. leaders have said about this issue over the years. Hillary Clinton, when she was Secretary of State, said that the United States should be stronger than anybody else with more nuclear weapons than we'll ever need. John Kennedy said that the United States should be, quote, second to none when it comes to nuclear weapons. And I think it's important to remember that the United States doesn't only try to deter attacks on itself with its nuclear arsenal, but we extend nuclear deterrence to 30 other nations in Europe, the NATO allies, in Asia, Japan, South Korea, Australia. And so they're counting on our nuclear strength. And so I think it is important that the United States has a robust nuclear deterrent for peace and stability in those regions as well.
So Matthew, where does the U.S. stand on the world stage with its nuclear arsenal?
Yeah, well, the United States has a robust nuclear arsenal, but one of the things that's concerning is that Russia in recent years has been relying more, not less, on nuclear weapons. So it's violating this Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty, a treaty that's been in place since 1987. Russia is in violation of that, building new nuclear weapons. Also, Russia has this escalate to de-escalate nuclear strategy, which means basically that they'll use nuclear weapons early in a conflict in order to deter the United States or others in Europe from getting involved, giving them the ability to coerce our NATO allies in Eastern Europe. And so I think the idea would be to develop nuclear capabilities that would allow us to counter these new Russian nuclear threats.
But as you know, Matthew, in terms of numbers, currently Russia has slightly more nuclear warheads than the U.S. Both together have enough to destroy all of human civilization. So why the idea that more nuclear weapons are necessary?
Well, I agree with the first part, but not the second part. So the United States and Russia have another treaty, that's this New START treaty that we signed in 2010. The United States right now is currently a couple hundred warheads below the limit in that treaty. The Russians are a couple hundred above. So as you rightly point out, the Russians have more currently. So the United States could increase its number of deployed warheads consistent with its international agreement. That would be one way of strengthening the arsenal. On the point of destroying the world many times over, many people argue that, but it's actually not true. You know, one of the things the U.S. does differently than other countries is we comply with the laws of war, and so the United States doesn't plan to use nuclear weapons against cities. We plan to use our nuclear weapons against an enemy's nuclear weapons to destroy them before they can be used. And so that means our number of nuclear weapons depends on the target, which means it has to be directly in proportion to the enemy's nuclear weapons.
But you don't think that the numbers that we have, these thousands of nuclear warheads, and I'm not talking about destroying the world many times over, I'm talking about just once. We don't have enough to do that?
No, we really don't. It's a commonly used line, but you know, I have a new book coming out called The Logic of American Nuclear Strategy. I cite a report from some colleagues of mine at the Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Laboratory, and they estimated it would take about 140,000 nuclear weapons to kill every American citizen. It's getting ghastly here, I know, on a Sunday afternoon. Russia right now has about 1,000, so roughly 1/140th of what they'd actually need to kill everyone. So, I mean, nobody should downplay the devastation from a nuclear exchange. They're the most powerful weapons on Earth, but nowhere near the ability to destroy the world many times over. And if Russia is going to have more, then we need to have more to protect ourselves and our allies.
Very quickly, how do you measure nuclear dominance?
One simple way is warhead count, but I think in practice, you want to think about the scenarios. What are the nuclear threats that Russia poses? How would they use nuclear weapons? And if they did that, how would we respond? And of course, the point isn't that we want to respond or we want Russia to use nuclear weapons, but if they see we have an effective response, they'll be deterred from moving in the first place. And so I think that's what you need. You need clear ability to respond to the threat the enemy poses, and I'm afraid that right now we don't have that.